Obama to react to what's happening in Libya. What he said, it's good, we appreciate it, but it's not enough.
But what do you want the US to do? Come and bomb Libya?
Not bombing Libya, but when they had trouble with Gaddafi before, namely Lockerbie, they found the ways more than condemning and just saying words. They start with they can have no-fly zone. They can do that. This will be a good step.
What about the Europeans? Have they done enough for you?
Well, we appreciate anything coming from anywhere, I'll tell you the truth.
But has it been enough?
No, not enough.
What should they be doing?
Well, to start with, they can stop political relationship with him. This is a good step in the right direction. They can froze his money and his families in their banks. They know that he's got all the money there. They can do that, and this is another way of pressurizing him. If they want to help, they can, but they're still not sure whether to go with Gaddafi.
But you understand they have interests?
Oh yes, they do. They do. I appreciate that, but they have to understand their interest is safer with the Libyan people, not with Gaddafi.
Awad Al-Faitouri, thanks once again. Good to hear your thoughts. Well, thousands of people are leaving Libya to escape the violence. Some have been arriving back in the Algerian capital to be met by their families. They brought with them eyewitness accounts of the chaos in Libya.
There were bullets in the early evening everywhere. You could see it with your own eyes. If you go out, you would be killed. Even if you looked through the window, you'd be killed. We've hardly eaten anything over the last week. Thank God we made it back to Algeria. It's a blessing.
There were so many people, and I can't describe what it was like in Libya. So many foreigners were there, and suddenly everything came to an end. There was no one left there. We stayed alone, but we were so scared we had to stay in and not go out.
I feel like crying. I'm so happy to be back in Algeria. Thank God I escaped the carnage. Did you see Baghdad? It was just like being in Baghdad. They saw planes, helicopters, people screaming, women slaughtering people. There were about 60 dead people in the green square in the centre of Tripoli. These 60 people were slaughtered. Buildings, hotels, the Justice Ministry, they were burned down. We were just working there, trying to make a living. Thank God our president, bless him, has helped us. It took us 4 days to get to the airport. You need too many papers to leave the country.
3,000 Turkish citizens have returned home from Libya. They arrived at the Mediterranean port of Marmaris on 2 ships sent by the country to evacuate them. At least 5,000 Turks have now left Libya, of about 25,000 in the country. More than 160 mostly Ukrainian nationals have arrived in Kiev after being evacuated from Libya on a military transport plane. Some have been speaking about what they had seen in Tripoli. One doctor described how difficult it was treating the many wounded people.
Surgery lasted about 1 hour. All were gunshot wounds. As soon as the surgery room was cleaned, it received another patient. You can calculate how many people have been treated in 8 surgery rooms working non-stop. As soon as they finished with one wounded person, another came.
Well, many people fleeing Libya have landed in London's Heathrow Airport. James Bays spoke to some of them who gave a harrowing account of the events in Tripoli.
The approach to Tripoli Airport. From the sky, the area around the city looks deceptively calm, but witnesses tell us there are checkpoints on the road and panic and fear among the population. Tripoli remains off limits to international media, with foreign journalists denied visas. We touched down in Libya, arriving in transit, spending over 17 hours at the airport. It's a place of chaos. Some passengers have now spent more than 3 days here, hoping to flee the violence and turmoil. Around the airport, television screens have the state TV blaring. A constant stream of Gaddafi propaganda, with pictures of demonstrations in support of the Libyan leader. For now, it's clear this airport and the capital city are pretty firmly under his control. One oil worker who didn't want to have his face filmed until he got on his flight, but who's worked in Libya for 18 years, says the last few days have been most unnerving.
We were trying to get in the terminal building, and maybe 5,000 people out there, and we had a very difficult time pushing and shoving. We're just about at the doors, and we got beaten back. I don't know, military people with batons.
We're now on board an evacuation flight arranged by the British government. When we were on the ground in Tripoli, it was only possible to film using a high-quality mobile phone. It wasn't possible to get the camera out because there were too many security personnel around and people were reluctant to talk to us. Now they're on board this flight, they are at last able to tell us what they saw.
The police officers ran down the Mesran street and they opened fire on the boys who had no weapons at all. We were on the roof, my colleagues and myself. They saw us on the roof and they opened fire on us as well, and then they threw gas canisters onto the roof, so we got gassed as well.
I heard so many gunfire. The people are on the road, we are scared, we are not to go to outside. We cannot leave the camp. If I go outside, something will be happen. When we were coming from our house to the airport, there are so many people are there, they said no plane, go, 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 go.
Many of these people have cut short their jobs, abandoned their homes and left behind loved ones. They don't know when they'll see Libya again. James Bays, Al Jazeera, on board the flight from Tripoli to London.
Well, protesters in Libya say they've taken control of the east of the country. There's said to be a heavy army presence near Tripoli as protesters plan to push towards the capital. Well, here are the latest developments. Let's recap. Muammar Gaddafi is soon to make a public address, according to state television. Now, he's expected to address residents in AlZazeera, which is west of Tripoli, and has been the scene of clashes between pro-Gaddafi forces and protesters. Well, meanwhile, Gaddafi is facing a crisis amongst his ranks. Now, we're hearing that his cousin, who's also one of his closest aides, says he has defected to Cairo. His name is Ahmed Gaddafi Dam, and he says his decision was in reaction to the regime's fierce crackdown on protesters. Would be really interesting to hear from him. And pro-Gaddafi forces have reportedly clashed with anti-government protesters in the coastal city of Misrata. Witnesses say clashes are continuing in the town, which is around 120 kilometers east of the capital, Tripoli. Meanwhile, the Gaddafi regime's been blaming foreign elements for the ongoing unrest. Lawrence Lee has this report.
As it tries to fight back, the Gaddafi regime is doing what it can to intimidate the opposition and stand its corner in the court of international opinion. These men, say Libyan state TV, tried to overthrow the government. To help the assertion, they also showed weapons allegedly seized from an Algerian national who, they said, had the aim of assassinating officials.